Most people think casinos make their money from dramatic moments: high rollers losing millions, poker tables filled with tension, VIP baccarat rooms hidden behind security doors. But inside the casino industry, the real money comes from something far less cinematic: slot machines. In Las Vegas alone, slot machines routinely generate more than 70% of total casino revenue. According to the Nevada Gaming Control Board, billions of dollars flow through slot systems every single month, and the reason is not simply because people enjoy spinning reels. It is because slot machines are mathematically optimized for continuous extraction at industrial scale. A blackjack table requires dealers, supervisors, breaks, security monitoring, and physical table management. A slot machine requires electricity. That difference completely changes profitability. One modern machine can process over 600 bets per hour from a single player while operating almost nonstop for years. But the more interesting part is not the speed, it is the psychology hidden underneath the speed. Because modern slot machines are not designed around gambling in the traditional sense. They are designed around behavioral retention. In fact, later in this video, we'll look at a mechanism called loss disguised as win, where players can actually lose money while the machine intentionally celebrates the outcome as if they won. And once you understand how that system works, the entire casino floor starts looking very different. One of the biggest misconceptions about slot machines is the idea that RTP somehow makes the game fair. Casinos advertise numbers like 95% or 96% return to player, which sounds reassuring at first. Many players subconsciously interpret it as the machine eventually gives most of the money back. But that is not how RTP works at all. RTP is a long-term statistical average calculated over millions, sometimes billions of spins. It does not protect individual players from catastrophic short-term losses. A machine with 96% RTP still mathematically keeps 4% of every dollar wagered over time, and when multiplied across enormous betting volume, that becomes an extremely stable business. Research from gambling behavior studies consistently shows that most players fundamentally misunderstand variance. Humans are naturally poor at interpreting large probability distributions, especially in emotionally stimulating environments. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman's work on cognitive bias demonstrated that people heavily overweight recent events and short-term patterns, even in random systems. Slot machines exploit this weakness perfectly. A player might hit several small payouts early in a session and begin feeling the machine is hot, while another player experiences 20 losing spins and believes a win is becoming statistically due. Neither interpretation is mathematically correct. The machine does not remember previous outcomes. And later in this video, when we break down weighted virtual reels, you'll see why many of the patterns players think they are seeing were never random in the way they assumed. The most important technological shift in slot machine history happened when casinos moved from mechanical reels to virtual reels. This completely changed what slot machines were capable of doing psychologically. In older mechanical systems, probabilities were physically constrained by the number of reel positions. If a reel had 20 stops, then every symbol occupied real physical space with visible limitations. But virtual reel mapping removed that constraint entirely. Today, a slot machine may visually display 20 symbols while internally operating on hundreds or even thousands of hidden probability positions controlled entirely by software. This allows casinos to create weighted reels, where certain symbols appear visually common while remaining statistically rare. Researchers Natasha Dow-Schul and Mark Griffiths have both written extensively about how modern slot systems evolved from simple gambling devices into highly engineered engagement systems. One famous example involved jackpot symbols appearing frequently on the first two reels, while remaining mathematically suppressed on the final reel. To the player, the jackpot feels constantly close, but internally, the probability may still be microscopic. This is where near misses become extremely important. Studies using fMRI brain imaging found that near misses activate reward-related neural circuitry far more strongly than ordinary losses. In other words, the machine does not merely generate gambling outcomes. It generates emotional momentum. And once casinos realized that almost winning could increase replay behavior nearly as effectively as actual winning, slot machine design fundamentally changed forever. Near misses became so effective that researchers eventually started comparing slot machine behavior loops to laboratory conditioning systems. In a famous experiment conducted by psychologists Luke Clark and Michael Dixon, researchers found that near misses triggered measurable increases in physiological arousal, despite being objective losses. Heart rate increased, skin conductance increased, brain activity inside reward processing regions increased. What makes this important is that the player is not reacting to money anymore. The player is reacting to perceived progress. Slot designers discovered that the human brain treats almost success very differently from obvious failure. Losing badly often causes disengagement, but narrowly missing a jackpot can create persistence. The player starts believing the machine is moving toward a payout cycle even though every spin is statistically independent. This is why many modern slots intentionally maximize visual tension near paylines. The system is engineered to manufacture emotional continuity between spins. And casinos quickly realize something disturbing. Frustration, under controlled conditions, can actually increase session length. The player becomes trapped in a loop where every near miss feels like evidence that the next spin matters more. Natasha Dow-Schul, in her research on machine gambling behavior, described this state as the machine zone, where players stop focusing on winning entirely and instead enter a repetitive dissociative rhythm built around continuous interaction. That observation becomes even more unsettling once you understand the next mechanism casinos heavily rely on, making players feel rewarded even while they are mathematically losing money. One of the most controversial mechanisms in modern slot design is something called LDW, short for loss disguised as win. The concept is simple but extremely powerful. Imagine a player bets $1 on a spin. The machine returns 30 cents. Financially, the player lost 70 cents. But instead of presenting the result as a loss, the machine explodes with celebratory sounds, flashing lights, coin animations, and victory music. Neurologically, the brain often encodes this event closer to a reward than a failure. Multiple gambling studies found that many players struggle to accurately track their net losses during sessions filled with LDWs because the sensory feedback system continuously interrupts rational financial evaluation. Researchers at the University of Waterloo found that these reinforcement effects significantly distorted players' perception of success frequency. The machine essentially fragments losing into psychologically manageable pieces while preserving emotional stimulation. This is why modern slot machines increasingly resemble behavioral conditioning platforms rather than traditional casino devices. B.F. Skinner's work on variable ratio reinforcement schedules demonstrated decades ago that unpredictable intermittent rewards are exceptionally effective at sustaining repetitive behavior. Slot machines operationalize that principle at industrial scale. And once casinos combined near misses with sensory reinforcement, the next optimization target became obvious. Increase the number of betting actions per hour as aggressively as possible without breaking the player's emotional rhythm. Speed is one of the least discussed but most important components of slot profitability. Casinos do not simply optimize for house edge. They optimize for betting velocity. A slot machine can easily process 400 to 900 spins per hour, depending on machine configuration and player behavior. Compare that to blackjack, where dealers, conversations, decision-making, and table dynamics naturally slow the pace down. Every additional betting action matters, because the mathematical edge compounds repeatedly across volume. Even a modest house advantage becomes extremely profitable when multiplied hundreds of times per hour across thousands of active machines. This is why modern slot interfaces are carefully engineered to remove friction from the betting loop. Auto-spin systems, instant replay buttons, ticket-in, ticket-out systems, touchscreen betting, and minimal downtime between spins all serve the same purpose: maintain uninterrupted flow. Some researchers even compare modern slot interaction design to social media engagement systems, because both industries optimize around continuous low-friction behavioral repetition. The player is not encouraged to pause and analyze outcomes statistically. In fact, the environment actively discourages reflection. Continuous stimulation reduces awareness of elapsed time, cumulative losses, and betting volume. Studies on rapid event frequency gambling have repeatedly shown that faster betting cycles are strongly associated with longer sessions and greater total losses. And this leads directly into another major component of slot architecture: volatility design. Because once casinos learned how to maximize spin frequency, the next challenge became controlling the player's emotional endurance across hundreds or thousands of consecutive spins. Volatility is one of the most important hidden variables inside slot machine architecture because it controls how players emotionally experience losses over time. Most people think slot machines are simply tight or loose, but casinos categorize machines much more precisely. Low volatility slots produce smaller but more frequent payouts. High volatility slots produce long losing streaks interrupted by occasional large wins or bonus events. Mathematically, both machine types can have identical RTP values while creating completely different psychological experiences. This distinction became extremely important once casinos realized that player retention depended less on raw payout percentage and more on emotional pacing. A machine that drains money too aggressively causes players to leave early. A machine that rewards too frequently becomes less profitable. So modern slot design evolved toward behavioral balancing. Researchers studying electronic gambling systems found that intermittent medium-sized rewards were particularly effective at extending session duration because they temporarily reset frustration without significantly damaging long-term casino edge. This is why bonus rounds often appear after extended losing periods. They act as emotional stabilization mechanisms. Some gambling researchers even refer to volatility curves as player survival systems because they help regulate how long players remain psychologically engaged before exhaustion or frustration forces them to stop. And once casinos understood how to manipulate emotional pacing, the next evolution became inevitable: transforming slot machines into layered entertainment ecosystems filled with progression systems, unlockable mechanics, and artificial complexity. Modern slot machines are intentionally designed to feel more interactive and skill-based than they actually are. This is why modern systems contain free spins, expanding wilds, multipliers, progressive jackpots, symbol collections, mini-games, and elaborate animated bonus rounds. Structurally, many of these mechanics resemble systems found in mobile games rather than traditional casino devices. The objective is not simply to distribute payouts. The objective is to create anticipation loops. Psychologists have repeatedly found that anticipation can sometimes stimulate the brain more strongly than the reward itself. Slot designers exploit this heavily. A player may continue spinning for long periods not because they expect consistent profit, but because they are chasing entry into a bonus state. Once bonus systems activate, behavior often changes dramatically. Studies on gambling risk behavior found that players frequently increase bet sizes after entering bonus features because the emotional framing shifts from controlled spending to opportunity pursuit. At this point, the machine no longer feels like a static probability system. It feels like an unfolding event with momentum and progression. This creates what researchers call the illusion of control. Even when outcomes remain overwhelmingly random, players begin interpreting patterns, timing, and interaction choices as meaningful strategy. The machine starts feeling alive. And this illusion becomes even stronger because casinos carefully construct the surrounding environment to reinforce stimulation from every direction simultaneously. Casino floor layouts are engineered with the same level of behavioral precision as the machines themselves. Slot placement is rarely random. Casinos strategically position high-stimulation machines near entrances, escalators, bars, restaurants, and heavy foot traffic zones. Loud winning sounds and celebratory animations constantly broadcast the impression that payouts are happening everywhere. Researchers studying casino acoustics found that human attention is naturally drawn toward intermittent reward signals, especially inside visually overloaded environments. This means that every jackpot sound acts as environmental advertising for nearby machines. Visual design follows similar principles. Bright lighting, oversized animated displays, rapid movement, and minimal environmental downtime help sustain continuous sensory engagement while reducing awareness of time passing. Contrary to popular myths, casinos do not need hidden oxygen systems to keep players active. The architecture itself already performs most of the behavioral work. Remove clocks, remove natural light references, maintain constant stimulation, reduce interruption, encourage flow. Everything inside the slot ecosystem ultimately points toward one operational metric: time on machine. Because the longer players remain seated, the more total betting volume accumulates, and the more reliably the mathematical edge compounds in the casino's favor. This is why modern slot machines are fundamentally different from traditional gambling systems. They are not optimized around dramatic wins or losses. They are optimized around continuous engagement. RTP systems, weighted reels, near misses, volatility tuning, sensory reinforcement, bonus structures, and machine speed are all interconnected components of the same architecture. The casino is not trying to make players win. The casino is trying to make players continue.